1. This happened to one of my friends. He and 2 of his buddies decided to go camping one weekend in the Uinta Mountains, Utah. They wanted to go out in the middle of nowhere to really get away from civilization and just chill and fish and stuff like that. All 3 of them are pretty outdoorsy and experienced with camping and backpacking, so this was no big deal for them. They went to a trailhead in the Uintas, hiked about half a mile up the trail, and then turned off the trail and just hiked for about 4 miles away from the trail. They had little trail markers so that they wouldn't get lost coming back. They find a spot, and there's no sign of anyone around. The ground looks untouched by humans. There was also a brook close by, so they decided to set up camp. All 3 of them had camping hammocks, so they set those up in trees and then just kind of explored around for a bit before they decided to build a fire and eat and stuff like that. Eventually, the evening rolled around, so they built a fire and made tinfoil dinners and were just shooting the breeze. When they decided to go to bed, the guy who told me this said he remembered laying in his sleeping bag in his hammock, thinking that even though there was the sound of the water in the brook close by, and every now and then there'd be insect noises, the woods were so quiet, like being out of civilization made him realize how rarely we as humans experience real silence, since we all fill our days with so many noises and distractions. He said it felt eerie. He could feel himself starting to doze off when the worst thing in the world happened to him. He had to pee when already being comfy and warm. He figured he'd rip the Band-Aid off and go pee before he fell asleep for the night. He put on his headlamp, got out of his hammock, and walked about 30 feet away from his buddies in their hammocks to pee. When he was walking over, he thought he saw something dart out of sight unnaturally fast and heard a crack of a branch. But because they were so far out in the wilderness near a brook, he didn't think too much of it. He unzipped his pants, peed, and then right when he was zipping his pants back up, his headlamp shone on something on the ground that paralyzed him with fear. A few feet away from where he was peeing were unmistakably fresh human footprints on the ground. It had rained in the mountains the day before, so the earth was soft in some areas, and there was no doubt in his mind that these were not only human footprints, but that whoever made the footprints was barefoot. The creepiest thing was that the footprints weren't staggered. They were side by side, facing where these guys were camping. It was as though someone was just standing still at the edge of their camping spot in total darkness, just watching them. Those were the only footprints my friend could see. No other prints leading to or away from the ones he saw. Totally freaked out, he ran back to his hammock and got his knife that he always takes camping. He loudly whispered his 2 friends' names, but they were already asleep, so they didn't answer. He debated whether he should wake them up, but decided against it, because there was no real physical threat he could think of that would justify waking them up. He put his headlamp on a brighter setting and shone it up in the trees and around the general area of where he had peed. Nothing. He didn't sleep that night. He laid in his hammock wide awake with his knife in his hand all night. Those footprints looked as though someone had been standing there moments before he walked up to that spot to pee. He felt like he and his friends were not alone. When it reached early in the morning, when the sun just barely started to rise, my friend decided he was going to pack his stuff up because he was still spooked and wanted to start hiking back to their car when his friends were up. When he was taking down his hammock, he saw another set of fresh footprints. But this time, they were 10 feet away from his hammock, like on the edge of the trees behind his hammock, as if someone had been standing about 10 feet away from him, just staring. Again, no other footprints leading to these 2 footprints. He was full on freaked out by this point, so he woke up his friends and showed them the footprints, and they got the hell out of there. Sometimes, you're not as alone as you think you are. Two. This happened the summer before I started 7th grade in middle school. I am now 29. I remember this pretty well because in the first week of 7th grade, we were asked to write anything about our summer vacation for a writing prompt. So I wrote about my weird encounter. My best friend had just spent the night, and it was now the morning after. My dad had left earlier that morning to go to work, middle of the work week, and my brother was still over at his friend's house from the previous night. It was just me and my friend that morning, but she had to leave early for a swim meet, so it would just be me chilling all day by myself. I was chilling on the couch in the living room, watching Newlyweds on MTV, while my friend was changing into her swimsuit. She lived down the street, so her mom was there to pick her up right after she changed. This now left me alone in the house. I continued watching Newlyweds while sitting on the couch in my PJs, when the TV started changing channels. I immediately looked down at the remote, thinking I had somehow hit a button, but I hadn't. The TV was still changing channels while I was holding the remote. I'm now thinking to myself, well, fine. I wasn't really enjoying this show anyways, and was thinking I'd read a book instead. I'm sitting there thinking this to myself, when a loud banging noise pretty much erupted right through the wall next to me. Banging really loud, over and over. At this point, I'm ready to leave the house immediately and walk to my mom's house, but I'm still wearing only a giant t-shirt. I start walking towards my room, feeling sketched out, when I hear a door slam. As I'm walking down the hallway, I see it must have been my bedroom door. Trying to be logical, I figured it must be a weird airflow kind of thing, but still wanted to get out of the house ASAP. I reach my bedroom door and try to open it, but it's locked. I then decided I would be perfectly fine walking to my mom's house in just a giant t-shirt. My dad's house is creepy. Three. I am currently divorced, but I got married young and was married for many years. It wasn't long after we first got married that we purchased our first home together. My ex-wife had this old dresser with a mirror on it, a sleigh bed frame, and a nightstand that she got from her grandmother who had passed a few years before. They were all very dirty, scratched, and needed to be painted. She had a sentimental attachment to these things, so I decided to clean and paint the table and dresser for her to use. She used the dresser in our bedroom and the table as an end table in the living room. We couldn't find a use for the bed that was broken, so we stored it in the spare bedroom because she didn't want to get rid of it. I ran into some weird stuff in that house. Sometimes I would briefly see things in the mirror that weren't in the room. It usually looked like a person's shadow. I would hear weird sounds and voices, and had doors shut that shouldn't. The bedroom was usually the worst place for this. However, I was a pretty grounded person, and didn't really believe in ghosts or spirits, so I tried to explain most of these situations away. Also, I should mention that I've had a lot of sleep issues over the years. I had lots of nightmares, night terrors, and some sleep paralysis episodes. Most of these were when I was a kid, but I did have a lot of sleep paralysis in that house, all of which had the typical hallucinations of shadow people and other things. Anyway, for our first anniversary, we took a short trip, and my ex bought this sappy book called The Last Valentine that sat on her dresser in front of the mirror for years that she never read. I also had this stress ball from work, which looked like a globe, that was in the living room on a shelf. One night, I was going to bed and noticed the stress ball on the floor in the living room. It wasn't a big deal. It's a ball on a shelf, so it's going to roll off. I checked the doors to ensure they were locked, turned off the lights, and closed the door to the bedroom as always. I went to sleep, but then I woke up in the middle of the night, and my arms were across my chest in a death pose, with The Last Valentine book cradled between them. I was confused and got up and nearly tripped over the ball, which was now somehow in my bedroom. But the bedroom door was still shut. My ex was sleeping and snoring loudly, so I started to get a little freaked out. I had no idea how that could happen. I checked the house to ensure someone didn't break in, though I couldn't figure out why they'd want to mess with me, but nothing else was off or missing. I was pretty freaked out. Did she sleepwalk? Did I sleepwalk? How come it never happened before or after that? I had no idea what happened, but this was the situation that broke my reality for me just a bit, and I was fed up with whatever was going on. I decided that if there was the slightest possibility that there was a ghost or something, that I would just talk to it. The next day, I spoke into the mirror, saying that if there was a ghost or spirit that wanted something, to just ask or give me a sign and I'd be happy to help. Otherwise, it needed to go away and to leave me alone, because it wasn't funny and was driving me effing crazy. Nothing really seemed to happen. It was anticlimactic as expected, but most of the weird stuff seemed to settle down after that. Hello there, my lovelies. Thank you so much for watching my second scary YouTube video on the Abysmal channel. My name is Abby, and it has been a pleasure reading for you. Please do like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye bye.